Hello everyone and welcome back to Red Room Stories. I know many of you tune into these tales to help you drift off to sleep. So before we settle in, I'd love for each of you to leave a comment sharing where in the world you're listening from. And if you're enjoying the episodes, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Now let's get comfortable, relax, and begin. In the heart of the dense blackwood forest, where the sunlight rarely pierced the thick canopy, a disquieting stillness wrapped around a single, dilapidated cabin. Its wooden structure creaked with the weight of unspoken secrets, and the air was permeated with the sweet, fetid smell of decay. This remote place far from the nearest town had haunted the dreams of Eleanor since she was a child, the memories of whispers and howls weaving themselves into her sleep. Now, 25, she stood before the cabin, drawn by a compulsion that gnawed at her very soul. Eleanor had always been the peculiar one, the girl who preferred the solace of trees to the companionship of people. Having just lost her mother, she needed closure, a way to tread the boundary between the living and the lost. But more than that, deep within her, an ancestral pull tugged her closer to this place of nightmares. There were stories, old stories, that her mother used to tell. Tales of a darkness residing in what they called the Whispering Pines. Yet somewhere in her mind, doubt flickered. Was it just folklore, or something far more sinister? The air was thick with tension as she pushed open the cabin's door, which groaned in protest, revealing a space cloaked in shadow. Dust motes danced in the wan light that penetrated through boarded windows, and the ground was littered with remnants of a life long abandoned, a child's toy half buried under layers of dirt. The unease in the pit of her stomach intensified, mingling with an inexplicable familiarity. Each step inside felt like an incantation, calling forth something lurking just out of sight. As she ventured deeper, leaves crunched beneath her feet, echoing ominously in the silence. She could almost hear the forest holding its breath as if the trees themselves leaned in to listen. Eleanor's fingers brushed against the rough wood of the walls, tracing intricate carvings that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. They were symbols, cryptic and foreign, reminiscent of the runes her mother had obsessively studied. The cabin felt alive, hungry, as if it recognized her presence, yet found her wanting. Days in the forest turned to nights, and Eleanor, consumed by the pursuit of answers, became oblivious to time. At night, she dutifully filled pages in her journal with frenzied sketches of the carvings, her thoughts spiraling into a blend of history and horror. Shadows danced at the edges of her vision, flickering just out of focus. Their movements sent shivers racing down her spine, yet with each brush of fear, a profound sense of belonging tugged at her heart. This place called to her, an echo of something buried deep, a legacy left by the generations before her. One evening, under the glow of a waning moon, she unearthed a worn-out diary beneath rotting floorboards. The ink was faded, but the account chronicled the final days of a woman, her ancestor, who had succumbed to the forest's compulsive whispers, consumed by the eldritch presence that stirred within. With every word, Eleanor could taste the sheer despair, a tangible dread that hazed her thoughts and compounded her own grief. But alongside the terror, she sensed an invitation. It promised understanding, insight into her mother's silent battles with this very darkness. Eleanor's dreams twisted from restless nightmares into vivid recollections of a spectral presence that seemed to linger just behind the veil of sleep. The moonlight cloaked her in cool silver, and she began to dance with the shadows, each step drawing her deeper into a hypnotic trance. In those moments, she felt more connected to the forbidding forest than she had ever felt among the living. Each night the whispers crescendoed, weaving intricate melodies and secrets until she could no longer discern the line between reality and the realm of the unreal. But with each passing day, the forest's grip tightened. Paranoia crept in with a creeping fog that coiled around her mind, twisting memories and leaving her vulnerable. She found herself staring into mirrors that reflected only darkness, her once lively spirit dimming to a shadow of what it had been. The forest seemed to conspire against her, as if plotting to unveil her darkest fears. Faces flickered in the corners of her eyes, their eyes hollow, mouths taut with silent laughter, mocking her solitude. One fateful night, she ventured beyond the cabin, drawn by a cacophony of whispers that surged like a swell of dark water. The trees loomed around her, their gnarled branches reaching for her, wrapping around her thoughts like serpents. Driven by an insatiable need, she followed the sound until she stumbled upon a clearing where the ground bristled with unearthly energy. Beneath a foreboding stone altar, remnants of candles dripped wax like tears in mourning. Compelled by an unseen force, Eleanor knelt before the altar, the air thick with potent anticipation. The whispers sharpened, intertwining with the rustling, leaves transforming into a cacophony that sang her name. In that moment of surrender, she felt her mother's presence wash over her, a wave of comfort laced with something darker. Then, without warning, everything shifted. Shadows erupted from the ground, writhing in chaotic dances, grasping at her limbs, filling the air with a fetid stench of primordial terror. With a heart pounding like a war drum, Eleanor fought against the malevolent embrace. Shadows clawed at her, pulling her toward the altar as the voices grew clearer, a chorus of wretched souls beckoning her name. The line between love and horror blurred, her mother's memory entwined in the chilling embrace of the forest. Frantically, she clawed at her mind, desperate to reclaim her identity, to escape the abyss that threatened to swallow her whole. But it was too late. In that moment of despair, deep in the heart of Blackwood Forest, she surrendered to the whispers, the haunting knowledge that she had come not to confront the evil, but to become one with it. And as the shadows consumed her, they echoed what her mother had whispered into her ear long ago, that the darkness was not a force to be fought, but a family legacy to embrace. A chilling laughter erupted from the depths, and Eleanor understood, too late, that she was home, forever ensnared in the sinister embrace of the forest's eternal night. On the outskirts of a town forgotten by time, a solitary figure approached an abandoned library, its crumbling facade a tribute to a past when stories lived and breathed within its halls. Eileen had heard whispers of the library's lore, each tale tinged with a sense of dread that wrapped around her heart like a vice. Drawn by a need to confront her childhood fears of forgotten knowledge and dark secrets, she carried an old flashlight, its beam feeble against the suffocating darkness. The air was thick with the scent of damp paper and mildew, making her stomach churn as she pushed the door open, a rusty creak echoing like a warning. Inside, the library was a mausoleum for stories untold, the shelves sagging under the weight of dust-laden books. Eileen's breath caught in her throat as she stepped deeper into the shadows, her pulse quickening with every creak of the floorboards beneath her shoes. The overpowering silence pressed against her, an invisible force that stirred echoes of her childhood anxieties, the nights spent holed up under blankets imagining monsters lurking just beyond her bedroom door. As she explored the labyrinth of shelves, her curiosity entwined with an unsettling feeling, whispering that she was not alone. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught her eye. Turning, she caught a glimpse of a dark figure, a fleeting shadow against the far wall. Her heart raced, terror gripping her as she questioned whether her mind was playing tricks or if the library held something far more sinister. Shaking off the chill that crawled up her spine, Eileen steeled herself, driven by the urge to uncover the truth behind the library's eerie reputation. She focused on the sections of books that remained untouched, their spines cracked and titles faded beyond recognition, as if they too harbored secrets too heavy to bear. The deeper Eileen ventured, the darker the atmosphere grew. The flickering slant of her flashlight revealed a corner where the air shimmered with an unnatural coolness, a disquieting contrast to the thick humidity enveloping the rest of the building. Here, Eileen stumbled upon a single leather-bound tome, its cover adorned with gold leaf that danced in the weak light. She could feel an inexplicable pull, an energy that seemed to hum from within, coaxing her to draw closer. As she opened it, the brittle pages crackled, releasing a plume of dust, a choking reminder of neglect and abandonment. Each sentence she read enveloped her in a narrative that was unsettling yet mesmerizing. It spoke of a long-forgotten cult, one that outsourced its power through sacrifice and ancient rites, binding its followers to a malevolent force. The words slithered into her consciousness, invoking images of shadowy figures flitting through the library's aisles, watching her. With empty eyes, she felt an icy breath behind her, and when she turned, the chill in the air heightened, thickening with anticipation. What if the stories were more than just words? What if they were a warning? A cacophony of whispers began to swirl around her, voices overlapping and indistinct yet echoing the themes of despair and longing. Paranoia gnawed at her mind. Every shadow seemed to morph, every sound amplifying her dread. The weight of the oppressive silence returned, but now it felt charged, as though the very walls were straining to confine the sinister energy that pulsed in the air. Eileen's heartbeat resonated in her ears, a chaotic echo of the conflict brewing, within and around her. Suddenly the library trembled, the ground vibrating beneath her feet. Books tumbled from their shelves, spilling their secrets like spilled ink across the floor. Eileen stumbled back in alarm, her mind racing, drowning in uncertainty. She turned to flee, but the path to the door warped. It was as if the library were a sentient entity, reshaping itself to trap her within its eternal grasp. The air constricted, and she could feel fingers of terror clawing at her throat, plunging her into a cold sweat. In the throes of panic, Eileen heard something, a distinct voice among the whispers, rich and resonant. It called to her, promising answers to questions she hadn't even thought to ask. The promise was intoxicating, as if understanding her darkest fears was worth any price. She hesitated, caught between the urge to escape and the desire to uncover the hidden truths begging to be revealed. With every ounce of willpower, she fought the compelling pull of the voice, pressing forward toward the remnants of the front door. Just as she reached out, the door dissolved into a wall of shadows, an unyielding barrier. The library's oppressive energy swelled around her, mocking her attempts at escape. She could feel her sanity unraveling, perceptions twisting under an invisible strain, as the stories she had thought merely fictional began spilling into her reality. The cult emerged vividly from those pages, the whispers becoming a chorus of chanting, summoning her to join their darkness. In that moment of clarity amid the chaos, Eileen understood the sacrifice demanded of her. Her fears, her insecurities, her essence. The darkness encroached, seeking to devour her whole, and she fought back, clawing her way to the remnants of her childhood. But the more she resisted, the tighter the grip of the library's power became, dragging her deeper into its haunting embrace. Finally, she felt the moment when her resolve shattered. The dam of her fears broke free, A tsunami of anguish she had hidden for years rushed forth. The library roared in delight, awakening and embracing her pain as its own, transcending the boundaries she once deemed impenetrable. The shadows leapt around her like ravenous beasts, coalescing into grotesque forms, mocking her struggle, the faces of those she had lost etched into their surfaces. With one last, desperate breath, Eileen succumbed entirely to the library's darkness. The stories whispered secrets of eternal torment into her mind, wrapping her in chains of despair, all while a perverse sense of elation enveloped her. She was no longer a mere visitor in this cursed sanctuary. She had become part of its narrative, a living tale of terror. The library had claimed her, her spirit now woven into the fabric of stories that would forever haunt others. Outside, the world continued on, blissfully unaware of the horrors hidden within the decaying walls. The library stood resolute, waiting patiently for its next unwitting guest. The door slightly ajar, a soft whisper promising adventure while holding chaos at bay. Eileen was gone, but her echoes would resound through the aisles, entwining themselves with the voices of those who would dare to seek the knowledge obscured by fear. In their quest for discovery, they would find nothing but despair, and the library would thrive on their descent into darkness. The air in Greystone Hollow was thick with unease by dusk, a palpable silence that seemed to drown out the chirping of crickets and the rustle of leaves. Amelia had always known this place was suffused with an unsettling quality, but after her mother's unexpected death, the emotional weight of returning to the old family cabin felt insurmountable. Each creak of the wood beneath her feet echoed in her chest, reminiscent of childhood games that were now tainted by loss. As she stepped inside, a chill surged through her, making her skin prickle, as if the shadows were stretching to welcome her home. Inside, the smell of stale wood and something vaguely metallic filled her nostrils. Dust motes floated in the dying light, each one a tiny universe swirling in endless suspension. Amelia set her bag down at the threshold, but her pulse quickened upon noticing that the old family photographs lining the walls were slightly askew, as if unsettling memories had been jostled awake. She hesitated, heart pounding, but the urge to retrace her childhood footsteps was too strong. The leather-bound journal her mother had kept rested untouched atop the coffee table, its spine marred and cracked. As evening settled in, the cozy warmth of the cabin faded and a biting wind howled outside, pressing at the walls. Amelia forced herself to flip through the pages of the journal, eager to connect with her mother's fragmented thoughts. There were entries about the wilderness that surrounded them, descriptions of glistening streams and warm summer days filled with laughter, but then the tone shifted, darkening into erratic scrawls that made her stomach twist. "They watch," one entry read, "from beyond the trees. Do not stray too far." A thread of fear burrowed into her mind, but part of her dismissed it as irrational, just the ramblings of a grieving woman. That night, sleep eluded her while dire thoughts tangled her mind. Shadows crept along the walls, stretching into unnatural forms as her imagination conjured horrors. She awoke to the sound of faint whimpering deep in the night, an echo of something not quite human. Heart racing, she tiptoed to the window, the cold glass pressing against her forehead, searching the darkness beyond. The moon hung high and pale, casting a spectral glow on the twisted branches of the forest, each tree resembling a grim sentinel, guarding that which should not be seen. The next day, fueled by a mixture of dread and curiosity, Amelia decided to explore the forest, a place her mother had often warned her against. With each step into the twilight under the canopy, the air grew denser, rich with the sour scent of damp earth and decay. Whispers seemed to echo between the trees, her name grating against her senses, melodies rising from the underbrush. A sudden chill raced down her spine. She felt a pull, a beckoning from deeper within the woods, where the light struggled to penetrate. Amelia stumbled upon a clearing, a barren patch surrounded by towering oaks, gnarled and ancient. At the center lay a stone altar, slick with moss and encircled by a ring of cold iron. Her heart pounded not from fear, but from the overwhelming sense of recognition that flowed through her veins. This place, though warped by years of neglect, felt hauntingly familiar. She knelt, tracing her fingers along the stone's cold surface, recalling bedtime stories about nature spirits and curses that tethered wandering souls here. As twilight descended again, she sensed a presence lurking, just outside her vision, eyes that watched and waited. The pit in her stomach churned, grappling with the stories her mother had woven about the forest's guardians. But they were just stories, weren't they? Amelia's resolve faltered as disembodied laughter echoed around her, chilling her heart and offering no solace. Overhead, the sky warped into bruised shades of purple and black, warping reality into something unrecognizable. Exhausted from the day's encounters, Amelia returned to the cabin, yet it felt different, as if an unseen force had shifted its nature. The walls whispered nuances of fear and the air grew stifling. She locked the door, but for the first time she could hear the wood creaking under the weight of something heavy, something undeniably alive, moving just beyond her reach. In her mother's journal, she stumbled upon an entry scrawled in haste, about the Watchers, detailing each attempt to appease them. The final entry was frantic, ending abruptly with a single word: run. Weeks flew by, or perhaps just days. Time lost its meaning in this cursed echo chamber. A sensation like a noose tightened around Amelia's chest. She was never alone. Shadows slithered across the floors, taunting her with glimpses of figures that dissolved when seen fully. The laughter returned, a melody dancing through her mind, seeping into her consciousness and curling around her thoughts, distorting memories into nightmares. Desperation bloomed when she realized her food supplies dwindled, and there was no escape from the relentless whispers pressing against her sanity. Each moment felt suffocating, the walls closing in as unseen eyes bore down on her, their condemnation radiating palpable malice. She attempted to leave, but the forest conspired against her, shifting paths and swallowing her screams into its depths. Panic thrummed within her as the truth dawned. She was meant to be a part of this, a sacrifice to echo in their dark symphony. It was then that she recalled the way her mother had once tasted copper in the air every time they ventured. Too deep into the woods, flashes of memories ignited. She had left offerings, berries, trinkets, anything to keep them at bay. The realization struck Amelia with the force of a bolt of lightning. She had ignored the sacrifices, had written them off as superstition. Now the forest curse spiraled into a morbid intimacy. It was feeding off her fear, and she had unwittingly offered herself up. Desperate, she ventured into the clearing once more, determined to negotiate with the unseen horrors she had invited into her life. Placing 3 stones, each carved with the initials of her family, she whispered into the air, her voice a tremor of fragility. The whispering hushed, and in that eerie stillness a dark shape loomed over her, formless yet suffocating, stretching toward the broken light filtering through the trees. In that moment, terror seized her chest as the realized truth unfolded. They had never left, but had only bided their time until their hunger demanded more. It was then, in her final seconds, she understood. Unyielding terror and sensation warped into something surreal, an acceptance of her fate. She could feel the cool earth swallowing her whole, pulling her toward an abyss of whispers. Amelia was no longer an observer in this ravenous ballet. She had become a participant, entwined in the fabric of shadows, and as the inky darkness enveloped her, she felt the strange amalgam of horror and peace, a surrender to becoming a part of the legend she'd long dismissed. In a crumbling part of urban decay where shadows loomed larger than streetlights, Aidan found himself actively avoiding his crumbling apartment building. The faint scent of mold and something more putrid wafted through the cracks in the walls, each gust carrying whispers of the building's forsaken history. 2 months ago, a series of inexplicable noises and strange happenings had rattled the tenant's tenuous grip on reality. The overhead lights flickered ominously, casting dancing shadows on the peeling wallpaper, and even the walls seemed to breathe with a life that Aidan couldn't quite comprehend. Today, he would finally confront the turns of his own fateful journey, leaving behind the warm glow of fleeting streetlights for the darkness ahead. As twilight descended, a thick fog began to drape over the city like an oppressive shroud. Aidan recalled how the rumors had spread among the residents, ghostly images seen darting past window panes, abominable figures glimpsed in the corner of one's eye, the anguished cries of those missing their sanity echoing in the night. He felt an unease settle in his stomach. It was not paranoia. Something tangible gnawed at him, a whispering dread clawing to escape. He gathered his courage and stepped into the dimly lit hall of his haunted home, every footfall echoing with a sense of foreboding as dust motes danced in the thin beam of his flashlight. As he ascended the staircase, each creak and groan of the wood felt like a warning. Aidan had watched the tenants slowly evacuate one by one, unable to withstand the building's suffocating influence. Only he remained, unwilling to part with the scant savings he had invested in this place. But that night would change everything. The air thick with an ancient chill, he arrived at his floor, the lingering cracked doors seeming to watch him with hungry eyes. He felt the sting of a draft, cold enough to freeze the heart of a specter. He had noticed odd occurrences in his apartment since he moved in, details that at first felt innocuous. Objects misplaced, a warm presence that would wash over him in the dead of night, a mirrored glance caught in the accumulation of dust. It felt as if the walls were pulsing with secrets, breathing sighs of sorrow. But tonight was different. The atmosphere charged with a vibrancy that felt almost electric. Steeling himself, he flung his door open and stepped inside, greeted by the familiar smell of decaying wood and something akin to rotten fruit, sharper and more acrid than usual. The sight that met him should have reassured him. There was nothing amiss. However, on his desk lay a peculiar object he had never seen before. A small, weathered box adorned with strange symbols that glimmered unnaturally in the dim light. He reached out with trembling fingers, the smooth, cold surface sending a jolt through him. Tiny hairs on the back of his neck stood on end as he opened it with reluctance, revealing a black Norse-like talisman. It thrummed, a resonance deep in his chest, a heartbeat overshadowing the rhythmic ticking of the wall clock, which felt oddly warped, almost lunatic. That night, the shadows in his room twisted unnaturally against the walls. He lay awake, the haunting breath of the apartment weaving through his dreams, making the edges of his sleep quiver with anxiety. Screams erupted around him, tattered cries of those who had vanished into the void. In the morning, he awoke to find his window inexplicably open, allowing the city's filth to converge in swirling drafts, while an unsettling silhouette flitted past the frame. Aidan felt himself drawn to the box, as if it hummed with untold promises. He began to unravel its contents, studying each symbol, convincing himself it was mere curiosity driving him deeper. Days blurred into nights as the shadows deepened around him, his perception twisting under the weight of dread. Each day brought forth new discoveries. Something always felt just out of reach, an unseen presence rifling through his mind without invitation. Pairs of eyes lingered in the corners of his vision, darting away before he could focus. Aiden became a ghost in his own reality, untethered from reason. One cold evening, as lightning illuminated the city, he heard his name echo in the unease, an intimacy with the night that made his breath quicken. He felt drawn toward the strange talisman, now pulsating like an old heart, whispering temptations that felt ancient yet familiar. Worries transformed into obsessions, and obsession into disdain for the flashing lights of life beyond his door. He ripped the sheets from his bed, making room for the box, committing to unearthing its truth. Within its enchanted grip, sanity slipped away, shared by phantoms seeping into his reality, spiraling whispers contaminating his mind like a toxic flow. Every twist of the shadows felt like laughter, suffocating him within the confines of purpose that slowly shifted into madness. On a storm-laden evening, Aiden felt the claws of inevitable fate circle around him, a dark invitation urging him toward the rooftop. Each step toward the concrete abyss felt like surrender. The rain fell in blinding sheets, the world below a flurry of chaos that echoed like laughter in the void. He stood at the precipice, shadows swirling, voices entwining like serpents coaxing him closer to freedom, or maybe despair. Beneath the rumble of thunder he heard them, fragmented pieces of words beckoning him, promises of hope intertwined with promises of annihilation. At that moment, he understood the binding nature of the box. It had offered him a glimpse beyond, just as it had robbed him. He had unraveled a truth he was never meant to hold. The world around him frayed into nothingness as Aiden lost the fight against the gathering darkness, his heart pounding against the initiation of chaos. He raised his arms, inviting the storm to consume him, seeking to surrender to the shadows he had courted for far too long. In an instant, terror struck, the talisman still pulsing with a relentless rhythm. His heartbeat echoed its sinister lull, merging their fates. He plummeted off the ledge, a rubber band snapping into the chaos, folding out into the void. As his body quaked against the storm and the screaming city below, he felt the talisman pulse with a finality he could not comprehend. In that moment, his entire existence shimmered, flickering like a faulty light in the darkness. The whispers ceased, the shadows clutched tight, and he felt the rush of a new journey begin. Silence enveloped him, a depthless void gazing back, revealing the boundaries of perception shattered. Time folded, leaving just the singularity of existence. As the apartment building stood still, haunted by the choices of those enchanted by darkness, Aiden was gone, but that thing, now an empty vessel, remained. It waited for the next lost soul, the next flicker of hope extinguished, ready to reignite the twisted arc of its story in someone else's trembling hands. The cold breath of the city murmured, knowing the cycle was far from over.